Okay, so this is a question where they give us a function and they ask us for some information about it. Some ways this is just to even practice the notation, right? What does f of 1, f of 3 mean? So here's the function, and first they ask us to graph it. And the way they mostly have us graphing these types of functions is with a multiple choice. So the answer is B here. Now why? Like, how could you figure that out? A couple different things you could do. One is you could take a calculator approach, and I'll show you that here in a second. But graphically, if you notice, the only real distinction between all three of these, or four of these, I should say, is, are those points connected, or really is this word called continuity? Is the function continuous, or does it split up somewhere? Like here, you notice the function on the left-hand side starts off, or I should say ends at a smaller value than it does to the right. On this side, the inverse is true. The left-hand rule here ends at a lower value than it does when it picks up again on the right. Here, there's just a gap in between, and then here, it's just completely continuous. You can trace over it without picking anything up. So an easy way to do that is just find the endpoints. Like if you plug in 2 here, you're going to get 2 into the top row, you're going to get 8 minus 4 is 4. And now, remember, this is not necessarily, it's not included, but we can at least see if it would have been an open or a closed circle, and where would it be. So if you plug in 2 here to this rule, you're going to get a 4 again. So even though this is an open circle, they're actually at the point 2, 4 is already a closed circle. So this would tell us it's smooth and continuous, right? It ends at 2, 4, and then it picks up again at 2, 4. So B would be the answer. So that's like how you would get it without using a calculator or something along those lines, or just taking your time to graph it by hand. Okay, let's proceed to B. So B says x is 1. What is the output, essentially? F of 1. F of 1 means what is the output when x is 1? Well, we should start off by considering x is 1 means we're talking about the top row. Because if x is 1, x is less than or equal to 2. Right? So plug in 1 here, you get a 0. So we get 1, 0. F of 3 says, well, what if x is 3? Well, notice 3 is larger than 2, so we want to use the bottom rule. And if you square the 3 squared makes for 9. Okay. And then the last thing to do is state the domain of the function. The domain, the way they're asking this question, essentially, I suppose, is it wants you to use the graph. Sometimes domain can be tricky when you have piecewise functions, but the good news is it's usually tied into what's going on here. If there's like fractions and things, that's something else to consider. But I can tell by the way they're asking this question, they want you to read the graph, because you're not going to have any questions in this class that are so complicated where you got to worry about denominators here and roots here, and then also where are they splitting up the interval. So when you have a graph, which we do, right? That's why they asked it as part C, not part A. We can read the domain as the left and right orientation of the graph. Are there any restrictions, any constraints? Like here, I would have to split up my domain at this x value here at this x value, this x, to split it all up. Here, if you read it left to right, there are no splits in the graph, right? So, for another instance, let's just say it stopped right here, right? And that's it. There was nothing else. Then your domain would just be, okay, well, it can go from negative infinity, but I got to stop it at 4. Now, in this case, it's not stopped. So you would specify the domain for this function, right? There's nothing else going on. This will just go on into forever. This will just go on into forever. So the domain is all reals. Be as small as it wants and as large as it wants without any gaps or holes to worry about. So that's the domain. And that's really it. Now, I told you I'd show you a calculator trick, so I'll do that real quick. Right, if you go to y equals and you plug this in, you can actually do this all in one shot, but you're going to need some parentheses. Make this a little bigger. You can do in parentheses 4x minus 4, close parentheses, and then you open up a new set of parentheses, and you're going to type in x. And to get that less than or equal sign, we're going to do second math, where it says test. That's the menu we're accessing. So less than or equal to is the 6th option. So you can either scroll down or you can press 6. We're going to put in our 2 and then close parentheses. Now we're going to put a plus sign in. And we're going to type in parentheses the new rule, x squared, or the bottom rule I should say. Close parentheses. Open up a new set of parentheses and then type in x. And this time we'll hit second math again to get to the test menu and choose greater than, which is the 3rd option. And we'll plug in 2. Close parentheses. And now, like for instance, if you go to the table, right, you should just be able to plug in. Let me delete what I have in here. You should just be able to plug in 1. You should be able to plug in 3. You know, and that way you're just using the calculator. It doesn't save that much time really, but you know, there's other ways to get those outputs 0 and 9. Graphically, we can look at it, and we just have to make sure we set our viewing window the same as theirs. Notice the x min, the smallest I can see on the x-axis, that's left to right, is -1. X max is a 5. Can't see any further than the 5 to the right. My y min I can see down as far as -10, so my y min, skip over the scales, don't worry about those. You can if you know how to use them, but they're not that important, at least for our purposes here. -10, and then max is 30. Okay, and then you know these scales. The scale, if you're curious, reflects the orientation of these ticks here. So if you notice, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like each of these tick marks represents 5. So you could, in theory, turn the scale to 5. But it's not that important. It's going to increase the number of ticks is all if you don't change it. So again, if you have your window set right and you graph it, you should be able to pick just a one-to-one description of what you need. And if you notice now, it's certainly B, right? That's the exact same graph. Everything else has gaps and things. So that's how you could process that question there with a little bit of help from the calculator. Hopefully it helps, and ask me if you have any more questions. Thank you. Bye.